Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and we're now going to do a season 1 review of Stargirl, the latest superhero series from the DC universe, integrated of course with the CW shows created by Greg Berlanti alongside the likes of The Flash, Supergirl, Black Lightning, Legends of Tomorrow. This was an original comic book character created by Jeff Johns, and it follows the adventures of Courtney, who is a young teenager and she lives in Blue Valley, and she comes into contact with a cosmic staff where she can wield energy waves and cosmic powers. And through her stepfather Pat, we learn the original wielder of the weapon was Starman, who is part of a superhero group known as the Justice Society of America. In the opening episode, we learn that they had an epic battle with the evil supervillain group known as the Injustice Society of America. Throughout the show, we learn the various backstories of both the superhero group and the superhero villain group, and we follow the story of Courtney as she wants to recruit a new generation of the Justice Society of America, as they learn that the Injustice Society of America is emerging and forming plans to control the whole world with their evil devices. So when I go into this review, I will be going into spoilers, so if you haven't already seen the show or watched all of the episodes, I advise you to stop watching now, go back, catch up with the series, and then come back to this review. So what was good about Stargirl? What worked about it? What was it that made it, I think, such a strong series? Well, I think first of all, for me, what was very good was the bright, optimistic tone. If you look at the show, particularly at the first episode, where we see the family arriving at Blue Valley and they're integrating into the colleges and their own jobs, and we see the scenery of this certain village and a certain environment, it's got a very much of a bright sheen tone about it, very similar to what we saw of course in Smallville, right? And it's got that same kind of heart and tone and just warmth and depth that we saw particularly from the first seasons of The Flash and Supergirl. Here you have a very accessible, very charming superhero show that you can get into. Yes, we do get a lot of backstory, we do get a lot of history into what went on before, particularly with the Justice Society, but it's nothing overly too heavy-handed, it's nothing too convoluted. You won't need to read up on 100 comic books to get what's going on. We have very good lead characters. Breck Bassinger in the lead role as Courtney. She's a very appealing, very plucky character. I like the fact that they didn't make this an angst-ridden character. You know, it would have been so typical and so easy to make her a character that hates everybody and doesn't like the life she's leading and just wants to crawl away in her own little corner. But no, she's a very conscious character. She's a very much of a proactive character. She wants to get things done. She believes in what she says, and what she does is right. Now this can get her into trouble and she can get a bit reckless, which I'll talk about a bit later, but overall she's a very positive, appealing character. We also go on to Luke Wilson as Pat Dugan, which I think for me may be perhaps the MVP of the show. Pat Dugan is very much the anchor. There's a lot of heart and a lot of soul to this character on here. Yes, okay, he's not physically imposing, but there's a very much of a strong will about this character. This is a character that wants to protect his family, always believes in good, always believes in doing the right thing. And I think when you introduce to a character like that, you always root for them. You always like characters whose heart is always in the right place, and everything that Pat does for the best of Courtney. He always looks out for her. Yes, he may give her a lecture, he may discipline her when he tries to discipline her, but that's always for a good cause. And I think Luke Wilson did a brilliant job of just creating, again, this really focused character with a lot of depth, with a lot of charm to him. We have a group of supporting characters as well that were introduced throughout the whole season. We have Yolanda. She's a victim of a photo being posted out about her amongst all the other students, and it really destroys her student life, and she has to struggle to kind of regain herself in the eyes of her parents and in the eyes of her students as well, and she later on takes the identity of Hellcat. So I thought there was a very interesting character there, and there's lots of depth, and we see her go out through the later of the season. We have Bev, who takes on the Dr. Midnight goggles on here. We have Rick, who takes on the Hour Man, and we learn that his parents are killed and really he's a much more of a angry, vengeful character, but we still understand his situation and his plight, and we can relate to what he's trying to do on here and his set motivation on here. We also have Cindy, who is the character known as Shiv. She's much more of a antagonist. She's a villain, yes, but she's one of those that's sometimes in the middle. She can kind of interact with the heroes, but again she can flip over to the more villainous side. She's a fun character, maybe a bit of a caricature at times, but I think overall still a very good character to watch and keep you entertained. We also had Amy Smart as Barbara, the wife of Pat, and in the beginning of the show she's not really involved in a lot in what goes on, and towards the end of the show they do bring her more into the events, and particularly when we get to the finale episode where she finds out what's going on with Courtney and the Cosmic Staff and the whole thing going on with Pat and the Justice Society. So by the end of it they made her a much more of a pivotal and much more of an involved character. We have Mike as well, who is the son, and it's very similar again. He's really on the fringes and off the edges of the storyline. For the most part he's complacent for the fact that he's not told about what's going on. He feels left out because of course Pat has to spend a lot of time with Courtney as they develop the powers of the Cosmic Staff and they're investigating what's going on with the Injustice Society. So Mike as well feels a lot left out. So another facet what made Supergirl good was the action sequences and the special effects, particularly if you go by the premiere episode where we had that terrific all balls out sequence in the mansion at the beginning. I always recommend for any show, particularly a superhero show, you always should open up with a spectacular sequence to get people involved and get people immersed into what's going on. And this is fantastic, where we see the original battle between the first Justice Society and the Injustice Society, and this is fantastic. All energy waves and projectiles and hand-to-hand combat scenes, it's all great throughout on here. For the most part you can see what's going on, and this is really almost movie level effects on here. Now yes, throughout the season we wouldn't get action sequences to this level until maybe the finale, but it was great on it, and I think for most part the CGI and the wire work and the practical stunt work throughout the whole series worked for the most part. I think there were never too many sequences that I felt didn't work, or maybe you can notice the wire work or the CGI was a bit lacking in it. I thought overall the action and the special effects were very good for the most part. Now I think what works the most for Stargirl and what was, I think, the most standout feature of this was the villains. Now I always say that whenever you're dealing with any action adventure, superhero adventure, or even just story, drama, narrative, the most important character is the antagonist, is the villain, because that is the character that really drives the story through. That's the character that gives the reason for the hero to do what they are doing, right? It's the cause for you to watch the episode or the series. Stargirl has 3 terrific villains in Brainwave, in Icicle, and Dr. Lizard. And what makes these villains so special is that yes, they are very powerful, but there's an intelligence behind them. They're not these just kind of random, psychotic, crazy villains who just want to cause mayhem and take over the world just because. There's a method and there's a real science and a process behind what these characters are doing. Now what Stargirl did that was so special is that it really took time to develop and progress these villains throughout the show. And it took multiple episodes, or really the whole season, for them to be beaten or defeated. We have Icicle, who really is at the forefront of what is known as Project America, where he deems he wants to make the world a better place. He lost his wife to cancer, so he feels that in order to prevent that from happening again, he needs to change the world, change society, reconfigure it, and that's really the founding motivation of the Injustice Society's plan. And we get to see Icicle, we get to understand his backstory, we see his parents who speak, is it Russian? We get to see his relationship with his sons. We get good time to build in his character. He's not maniacal, he's not psychotic, he's very intelligent and politely spoken. We see some sort of relationship between him and Barbara. He yearns or gets some sort of feelings towards her. They didn't really explore that too much throughout the whole season, but again, it just develops the character very well. We also have Brainwave, who I think seemed to be the most powerful of the Injustice of Society. We learn about his backstory, what happened to him. He loses his wife as well. We get a good time to spend with him and Henry Jr. at the time and their relationship overall. But the fact that we have a very much of a loving relationship between Brainwave and his son, again, it maybe may not make him sympathetic, but it just adds a lot of depth to his character. Again, that there is another side. He's not just this crazy psychotic killer that wants to destroy the world. Again, like Icicle, there is some depth and there is some complexity towards it. We also have Dr. Lizard, who again is a much more of a freakish kind of villain. We don't quite get the same warmth that we got to a degree with the previous two villains, but we still get that relationship, or hinted relationship, between him and Cindy. Again, she feels that he doesn't deem her worthy enough to join the Injustice Society. There's this concept that maybe he's cloning her, or he's generating clones. We see he's the one that's hidden beneath the fortress of the Injustice. He's got all of the disciples running around, and again, it's just very much of a mysterious feel with Dr. Lizard. Okay, so he has a much more of a menacing presence about him, a very much of a dark, very suspicious feeling about him, and again, he has got a much more of a powerful influence. So I really enjoyed all three villains. So what didn't work? What was maybe bad about the show, or what didn't work as well throughout? So I think first off, I think the character development and certain character beats did feel a bit rushed, did feel a bit forced. And I think in particular I'm looking at Courtney here. So you have to remember, she's a young teenager, and despite the fact that yes, she's a gymnast and she's very athletically fit, in terms of a superhero, she's very much of a rookie. She doesn't really know what she's doing, you know. She's got no idea about this cosmic stuff that she comes into, the powers, this whole idea of the Justice Society and what the powers of Starman means, right? But literally within 2 or 3 episodes, she already becomes this fully fledged fighter and recruiter. She's already going around trying to recruit the other members of the Justice Society. We see in that episode, I think it was episode 2, where she uncovers the hidden weapons of the Justice Society, and then straight away she goes around trying to recruit these other members. And it's like, you barely came into the cosmic staff yourself, you're barely a fighter yourself, yet you expect these other characters to just take what you're saying and just join you. It would make more sense if Pat was trying to recruit the team, because Pat has had experience of fighting with the Justice Society, but Courtney is, you know, she's barely found the staff, and already the show was trying to present her as this fully fledged leader, and it didn't quite convince with me. I think also they rushed the recruitment of the whole team. I think they get together maybe the 4th episode or the 5th episode. Now I know some people and some fans would have complained if the show took a much more of a steady approach in introducing the characters first, and maybe building up Courtney first as Stargirl before it went on into the recruitment of the Justice Society. But I think that would have been a much more of a credible approach if maybe we got the season first to know Stargirl and get her focus and build herself as Stargirl, and maybe we started recruiting the team at the end of the season, or maybe beginning of season 2. You can still have all the supporting characters, and you can still have everybody learning or going through whatever experiences they're going through. We learn the backstories, that's fine. But it was almost like episode 4, bang, we've already got the Stargirl, the team, the Justice Society team, and already they're fully functional. I just think it felt a bit rushed. And I also noticed that some of the fight sequences throughout the show were very darkly lit, and this is something that productions and series do a lot. They lower the contrast tones so they can kind of hide away maybe the flaws within the CGI, and Stargirl did that a lot. Sometimes it was a bit hard to make out who was fighting who. Everybody's fighting in these dark lit corridors or warehouses, and yeah, it's a bit jarring as a viewer. You can't really get invested in the action if you can't really tell who's fighting who. So I mentioned already the rushed nature of the series, and again I think this show, particularly in the finale, but I just felt the villains were beaten too easily. You know, they did a good job throughout the whole season of making the Injustice Society formidable foes, formidable enemies that were really superior in prowess to the heroes, the heroes really defeat them quite easily. Now, on one hand, yes, we do go through a progression of the Justice Society. We do spend a good amount of time seeing them train and develop together and big force. That's fine, but I just think, again, they shouldn't have defeated the Justice Society. I think that was too easily a win, and I think these flaws of everything seemingly rushed, I think a lot of this was down to the fact that maybe they felt they were only going to get one season. So when you think you're going to get one season, you kind of have to wrap everything up. So you spend a lot of time developing the heroes, developing the villains, but there comes that point where you have to think, right, we have to bring everything to resolution, because we don't know whether we're going to get a second season, so we can't leave things dangling. So we have to get the team together as quick as possible, then we have to get the villain team as quickly together as possible, then we have to have the epic battle, and then we have to have the heroes beat the villains, and then we have to have everything wrapped up together very nicely in a tight little bow, right? So again, it just felt a bit rushed and a bit hurried at times, and I think had they already been renewed for a second season earlier on, then I think things would have maybe moved at a much more of a more steady pace. So overall, I think this was a great, strong first season of a superhero show, and if I had to give it a rating, I would give it 8 out of 10. I think it had that very bright, optimistic, very spirit tone that I think a lot of DC comic characters and properties should have. You have great performances from the lead actors, and particularly from Brett Bassinger, Luke Wilson. You have great villains, very strong villains, a trio of imposing, very intelligent and powerful villains that really carry the show throughout on here. Good effects, great effects, and embracing again of that comic book source material, that comic book escapism and adventure. And I just think it was a very great show overall. A few issues with the development of certain characters and certain villains that I think they can work on perhaps through the second season, but overall a very promising start, and I look very forward to seeing what they're going to do within season 2. I know a lot of people are a bit concerned the fact that it will integrate from the DC universe overall to the CW universe, and that might mean a diminishing in terms of the production and the budget, so maybe the effect won't do as well. Also concerned that they may adopt some of the tendencies of the CW in terms of the more soap opera and the relationship narratives that we see on here, so maybe that's a bit concerned. But no, I've got faith. I think, you know, as long as they stick to what worked well for the first season, that they can adapt those sensibilities going ahead into season 2. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of promise going on for this show that really, for me, exceeded expectations. I was a bit skeptical when I first heard about this, but this show has proved me wrong. And again, if you can take the characters seriously, if you take the mythology seriously, and you embrace the source material and take a good time to developing the stories and the characters, then I think you will do very well overall. So those are my thoughts and feelings on Stargirl. A very promising first season, and hopefully they can take the elements that made it work very well, work on the flaws, work on some of the villains, make sure everybody has a much more involved capacity the second time round. Then we can get a strong series for season 2. And so those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this was a strong season? How do you think it compares to the overall superhero shows, in particularly the shows on the CW, or indeed the other DC Universe shows such as Doom Patrol or Titans? So let me know what you think in the comments below. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves. You can also check out the playlist where I review other of the superhero shows such as The Flash, Supergirl, Black Lightning as well. So those are my thoughts for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.